Signal's back. Almost a year in this fucking cabin, and the pandemic must be over. The zombies are dead. Let's see what the news says.
Now, there are fears that the coronavirus outbreak could become a pandemic. We now know there are confirmed cases in 35 countries. It's already classed as an epidemic, but here's an update from the BBC's medical correspondent.
Fuck me.
Fergus Walsh.
So Day of the Dead tells the story of a group of survivors trying to live in an underground bunker in Florida while a mad scientist tries to figure out how to tame and possibly train the undead. Welcome back to a long motherfucking delayed review of Day of the Dead. So those of you guys that are just now joining me, I actually started my Romero of the Dead review series last October. I had very big ambitious plans, and shit just kind of went tits up. I actually did a review for this movie and was kind of staying course with the plans that I had, but unfortunately somewhere along the way in the middle of editing, my files got corrupted, my entire review was lost, and out of spite, I didn't want to do this review again for a long time. So it's been a while, but now we are back on track. I'm going to finish up this as well as the Saw reviews for all you impatient bitches out there, so keep your eyes peeled for that too. But Day of the Dead, the third Romero movie. Some people actually consider the first three movies like an unofficial trilogy, and everything that comes after that is just kind of other extra stuff, which does not give me very much faith for how much I'm going to enjoy those movies. So, Day of the Dead. With Night of the Living Dead, with Dawn of the Dead, with Day of the Dead, they're three very unique movies. They go for unique themes. They have different approaches. Obviously, the budget and technology has progressed from 1 to 3. And this is an interesting movie. It's an interesting third film in a trilogy, if we're going to call it that, because this is dealing much more with the de-evolution of humanity and how the survivors in this new world, this new pandemic where the undead are out there and now the little bit of humanity that's left has to figure that out. Are we losing our humanity? And that commentary, that social commentary right there, actually is my first positive of Day of the Dead. Now, Romero, at least in the first two movies and now this one, has been really good about inserting social commentary into his films. I haven't seen enough of them to see if that's something that he just does in every movie that he does, but in Day of the Dead, kind of asking that question about, the power of the military and, will that power be exploited as humanity devolves into the little bit of survivors, and everything that's explored in that I think is interesting. It does give this movie a unique approach. It does set it aside from Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead being very high in commentary and talking about consumerism and addiction to shopping and all that other stuff, and it does a very good job on that one. This one I think does a very good job exploring its themes as well and asking those questions where you could just easily turn your brain off, watch a gory ass zombie movie, or you could turn your brain back on and think a little bit.
Civility must be rewarded, Captain. If it isn't rewarded, there's no use for it.
Second positive, and probably the thing that I will remember and like this movie for the most as time goes on, the practical effects, the gore effects, awesome in Day of the Dead. Some of the best that I've ever seen, which kind of gives me high hopes for maybe they're going to get better even more when they get to the Land of the Dead and the other movies that are further along. But the progression from Night of the Living Dead effects to Dawn of the Dead effects, which are arguably one of the worst parts of that movie, the blue face and everything, to this, holy shit, what a leap it goes. Because you want to talk about the makeup effects in the zombies and the makeup effects and the gore effects, especially in the third act when people are getting torn up and a guy's face is getting ripped and his eyeballs popping out, and you get the one guy who's literally just torn to pieces by a bunch of the undead. It is awesome, it's gnarly, it looks real. Gotta love it. I also like the character of Dr. Frankenstein and that title. It's just B-movie enough. You have this guy who's in this bunker who's doing these little secret experiments where even the doctor's working with him don't quite know what he's up to. The military are there to protect him, don't really know what he's up to, and the movie slowly kind of lets you in on what he's going for and the main character on what he's going for, where he's kind of trying to see if there is still some humanity, still some cognitive thinking in these zombies, and are they able to be trained? Are they able to be kind of tempered down a bit? Are we able to utilize them for things other than just running the fuck away from them? And I kind of like that. I don't really know any other zombie film that goes for that, all the way up to the character of Bub, which I actually really like too. That's something that character and that concept could go one way or the other. It could be the dumbest fucking thing ever, or it could be a really cool standout thing. And there's something about Bub in The Day of the Dead where he's kind of like the symbol for this movie. He's the iconic image that you see in a lot of the posters and the artwork. And he's just a cool concept of a character, a zombie who is essentially like this dog chained up that's being trained by Dr. Frankenstein to salute and to listen to music, and doing this whole concept of rewarding zombies with fresh meat if they do what they're supposed to do, and the whole little journey that he goes on in the third act when shit's going crazy and he goes kind of out for revenge to a certain extent to kill the main antagonist for killing Dr. Frankenstein. I really like that. And finally, I really like the score in this movie. I kind of like the Dawn of the Dead score. It's a very weird score. Like if you watch it isolated or listen to it isolated, you're like, that's for a zombie movie. It's so weird that it works. Day of the Dead is much more of kind of a traditional 80s synth style score, but I think that it's cool. I think it's unique. And of the movies so far, I think that it's the best score of the three. Now moving into my negatives. Does everybody in this fucking movie have to shout? So much shouting in this movie. My God.
I'm running this monkey farm now, Frankenstein, and I want to know what the fuck you're doing with my time. Those are my men in there.
All of the military characters are so turned the fuck up to 12. They're so over the top. They are so bombastic and so like B-movie cheesy that I could see some people watching that and being like, oh, that's what I love about this. It kind of gives it its own flavor. It's a sign of the times. I watch it and it fucking annoys me. I just want all of them to die violently, which they do. But all the shouting, all like the scenes where they're laughing, and it's just so over the top, I can't take it seriously. I know it's a movie that is supposed to have some of that cheese, and there is certainly, the 80s thing going on here where we weren't quite there as filmmakers or even as film fans yet to expect more than this. But upon rewatch, because I've watched it twice now, that was what stood out to me the most as a negative, is like, oh, if they could just dial that down like 12 degrees, I would be much better. I also don't really think, just in general, this movie has that great of characters at all. I mean, I like Dr. Frankenstein, I like Bub and their kind of relationship there, but even some of the main characters, some of the good guys, they're just, nothing really stand out about them. It's not that they're unlikable, they're just not likable. There's nobody in this movie that I latch onto like I do with the other two films, to where there's somebody that I want to survive, or there's somebody that I'm behind that I'm like, okay, I'm following them. There's nobody like that in Day of the Dead. You watch the movie, you see this kind of tug of war of power going on between the doctors and the military. The military are just immediately just smeared as the bad guys, and they're so over the top with it that you hate them. You hate them, you're supposed to, but you hate the fuck out of them. Then you go to the doctors and you're kind of like, yeah, but I don't really care if you guys die either, because you're just boring. And in a movie with the zombie apocalypse, where you have smaller casts that are isolated, that you're supposed to kind of latch onto these people as the remainder of humanity, this is what's going to rebuild society potentially, as small groups like this. You need to have at least one or two characters that you really like, you really root for, you really latch onto as a viewer. I just don't feel like Day of the Dead has them. And my final negative, I honestly don't remember. It's been so long if I even talked about this with the first two movies. I remember some scenes about the first two, especially for the time, Night of the Living Dead predominantly, being very terrifying, probably for those audiences at the time, and even for maybe some viewers nowadays that watch it and kind of put themselves back into the mindset of that era. Day of the Dead is not what I would consider a scary zombie film. Not that there's really very many of them out there that are scary to me, so that's probably gonna be a negative I'm gonna say with most of them. Day of the Dead is much more kind of that 80s entertainment, to where it's got the cheese to where you can kind of have fun if you are latched into the way that 80s movies are cheesy and you have these over-the-top characters. You have these wild concepts like Dr. Frankenstein and Bub and training zombies, and you enjoy the gore and how over-the-top that is. There was no point in this movie where I felt genuine tension, I felt dread, I felt like things were heading in this dark direction, like, ooh, what's gonna happen? I was just kind of along for the ride and entertainment, which maybe that's what they were going for, but horror movies to me should always have a little bit of dread, a little bit of some tension there. Day of the Dead, not really landing for me. But with all that being said, guys, I actually enjoyed this one. It's not a movie that is going to be at the top of my list of zombie films. I've said it before, not really a zombie subgenre guy. There's very few movies in that subgenre that I genuinely love. Day of the Dead, I like it. I could rewatch it again. I could have some fun with it. I can understand why people that grew up with it love it if they do. And it's a movie that, so far in this trilogy of Romero films, I haven't really hit a big speed bump yet. So that's a recommendation for it, is that if you like the journey that we're on so far in the Romero of the Dead films, Day of the Dead does stay the course pretty decently from Dawn of the Dead. Not quite as good as that one though. So if you're a fan of Romero's zombie films so far, Day of the Dead does have a lot of things that you will enjoy, predominantly the gore effects, but expect a lot of really over-the-top villains and some not so enjoyable protagonists, so that might drag the story down a bit for you, but still a crazy little 80s zombie adventure as it is. So check this thing out online and stream it. But what do you guys think of Day of the Dead? Is this your favorite Romero zombie film? Is it your least favorite? Do you like it more than Dawn of the Dead? Is this on a downslope for you? How painful is the rest of this review series going to be for me? Let me know down below and we will talk about it. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button if you are not already a subscriber. And remember, as always, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean that you have to be.